All right, we learned in Module 1 that stuff is scarce. And because stuff is scarce, we can't have everything, and therefore we have to make choices, and choices incur cost. What this means is that everyone, every society, must answer 3 basic questions. What goods and services are we going to produce? Can't make them all. 2, how will we produce them? And number 3, who will consume them? Societies are organized around the responses to these questions. Predominantly today, there are 2 answers. One is a market economy, or capitalism. And then the other, which is pretty much almost completely eclipsed now, is communism. And both of these societies answer these questions in very different ways. We want to talk about these kinds of societies. Now, Adam Smith is considered kind of the first economist, kind of the father of economics, and he wrote a book in 1776, easy to remember, called The Wealth of Nations. This is still a very respected book and is largely the underpinning of market economics. And he said that the operation of a market system, buyers and sellers interacting in a market, creates a curious unity between private interest and what's good for society as a whole. This is what he's famous for. He was Scottish. You may have never heard of him, but he's, I assure you, super evident and popular and revered in Scotland. And so that's curious, isn't it, that he writes this book espousing the benefits of market economies, or capitalism. And the book is the same year as the birth of a nation, which is going to become the greatest success story and proponent of market economics, or capitalism. Not really that big a coincidence. So you got this guy in Edinburgh resenting Imperial London and their control in economic matters. You have people in North America who are resenting Imperial London's control in political matters, but really it boiled down to economics. What was the tagline? You remember? Taxation without representation. It was the taxes that really made Americans annoyed. Smith talked about something called the invisible hand. He declared that self-interest, which is easy to mistake for greed, doing what I want for me, when self-interest is awakened and guided by a market system, that the invisible hand takes over and almost magically gives society what it wants. For example, if I decide I want some really good steaks, and I go to a butcher shop, and I buy these steaks, did the butcher give me the steaks because he loves me? No, he did it for the money. Did I patronize that butcher shop because I love the butcher? No, I did it because I got the most utility or satisfaction for my dollars in buying these particular steaks. So I was being selfish, and the butcher was being selfish. But hey, society has nice things. Apple is out for profit, and even though some of you act as if Apple is a religion and you love it, you just want a nice iPhone. And yet we have iPhones and all these other nice things our society has given us because of market economics. Yes, that is a picture of Barack Obama. And the reason I put this up here is because this is a very famous picture that ran in 2008 when he was first becoming prominent and running for president. And it's a picture of him teaching at the University of Chicago School of Law, which is also the preeminent econ grad school in America. And they're both very conservative philosophically schools. And so, but no one ever notices what he's lecturing about. He's lecturing about relationships built on self-interest. I think it's interesting that in America, Barack Obama, who is arguably the head of the political left, he's not questioning the sanctity of self-interest, the invisible hand, Adam Smith's ideas. That is just a core aspect, really, of what America is about. Now, not everybody's about that. After Adam Smith writes The Wealth of Nations, industrialization gained speed, and we have the Gilded Age in the late 19th century, and overall wealth is soaring, but there are a lot of poor people crowded in urban slums, and they're the workers. that doesn't seem right to some people. Here's the problem about capitalism. I believe about capitalism like Winston Churchill did about democracy. Winston Churchill once famously said, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. I believe that about capitalism. Capitalism is the worst way to organize an economy, except for all the others. The downside of capitalism is it does produce rich people and poor people, a stratification of wealth. Karl Marx, a German philosopher, he didn't like this. This is not fair. He said, instead we should have a system, instead of a market economy or capitalist economy, we should have a command economy or a centrally planned economy, where all the resources are owned by the government and production is coordinated by central plans of the government, hence command or centrally planned. This is known as communism. Now, characteristics of a command economy are these four items. Let's look at the former Soviet Union, where this really saw its fulfillment, this philosophy. Public ownership. Government owns everything. No real estate. You don't own your apartment. You rent it. No farmers own land. The government owns everything. All the capital, the factories, all that. Centralized decision making. The government is going to plan out how we answer the three questions. Economic planning. Everything is going to be carefully laid out by the central government, and we're going to allocate resources not by prices and markets, but by command. Hey, tank factory, you're going to get 10 million tons of steel, and tractor factory, you're going to get 5 million. That kind of idea. Now, as you know, the former Soviet Union collapsed. China, thinking, oh man, we don't want that to happen to us, began to embrace market reforms or capitalism. And largely, communism has been discredited. Cuba is pretty much given up. They pretend not to, and North Korea is still clinging a little bit, but even they've embraced some market reforms. China, of course, is firmly communist, as is Vietnam. But they've embraced market economics with a vengeance and gotten very rich by doing so. Why did it fail? Really for two reasons. One is the coordination problem. Former Soviet Union spans 12 time zones. That's a lot of central planning and allocation by command. That's a kind of big bureaucracy. That's doomed to inefficiency and failure. And secondly is the incentive problem. If my job at the tractor factory is to make 5 tractors a year, am I going to make 6? Well, why would I? I mean, I'm not going to get a raise. I'm not going to get a better apartment. I'm not going to get stock options, ownership of the company. Government owns the company. So I'm just going to learn how to make my quota of tractors by 11 o'clock and then have lunch and drink vodka the rest of the day. That is not a way to have a growing, innovative economy. And that's the problem, essentially. Now, market economy, capitalism, private firms account for, look at this definition. Private firms account for all production. Government has no involvement in coordination of economic activities based on prices generated in competitive markets. For example, the price of iPhones this Apple is selling, they're great. I'm going to make a smartphone as well. And that's how, that intelligence is how resources are shunted into that market. But notice that's not entirely true. Private firms don't account for all production. The government is involved in lots and lots of stuff. The government does have some involvement in coordination of economic activity is based mostly on prices, but also certain government goals. So in reality, there's no such thing as a pure market economy. And there's no such thing as a pure command economy. In the former Soviet Union, you did at least own your personal property. And if you worked in a tractor factory, you owned a set of tools. And you might illegally fix your neighbor's cars for a bottle of vodka. And you were a little bit of an entrepreneur there. And so every economy is really a mix of both command and market economic systems. The U.S. tilts more toward market economics, and China is sort of in a weird hybrid in the middle somewhere right now. Now, characteristics of market economy, capitalism, private property. You can own stuff. I own a house, and if I write a song or a novel, I can copyright that, and I own that. So all kinds of property, people can own that. Freedom of enterprise and choice. If I want to be a ballet dancer, I can make a living at it. I can be a ballet dancer. Former Soviet Union, it's like, well, your skills look like you're kind of mechanical and you're not that smart. So we're going to, pretty much in 8th, 9th grade, we're going to shunt you into a automotive program, and you're going to work in a tractor factory. But I want to be a dancer. No, you're going to work in a tractor factory. Self-interest. Curiously, we're not focused on societal interest. We focus on our own individual interest. And as a result, society has a much nicer set of stuff to enjoy than did the former Soviet Union. Soviet Union says we were greedy. And to some degree that's true, but they missed the point. Competition, that's vital. We don't like monopolies. If I had a monopoly on cell phones, it was the size of a Kleenex box, and all it did was make phone calls and text, but you had to buy it because I had a monopoly. And someone comes in and says, hey, Mr. Wendell, if we invest $10 million in this design process, I can make the phone much smaller, and it can be a computer, and it will be cheaper, and people will love it. And I'm like, why would I do that? You have to have competition to have innovation. Markets and prices, obviously, for buyers and sellers to interact, to generate those prices, to create that intelligence to where we allocate stuff. And an active but limited government. The government must ensure the rights of that property. Where do you go to get a copyright? The government. Where do you go to record your deed for your real estate? The government. And what if somebody becomes monopolistic? Well, the government will take care of them. That is an intro, basically, to types of economic systems, but we've got more to learn about that.